Thanks for joining me in this segment of Belly Flopping into Mysticism. This is a story I've meant to put together and share for a few months now. After I had a chance to speak with Robert Whitaker in the first interview back at the end of June, I had hit pause on the record and we ended up chatting a little bit afterwards. And one question he had was, I have a bobblehead that was sitting on the shelf. And he asked, "Oh, who's the bobblehead?" And I said, "Well, I actually have a little bit of a story about that, if you don't mind me sharing it." And he said, "No, if it's just a few minutes, that'd be great." So in 1996, I was swimming on a master's synchronized swim program. We'd compete at the nationals in October of every year. This provided me an opportunity to swim with the women that I idolized growing up. I used to be able to quote the routine scores and everything. And that was one of the reasons I moved out to the Seattle areas, because when I was growing up, Seattle had such a strong swim program. Years later, here I was as an adult getting to swim with the same women whom they got to compete at nationals and win nationals and have all sorts of experiences that I could really only dream of. In 1996, I actually got to swim with them, and we swam to a baseball routine. So I have my little hat. This was also on the shelf back there. And basically what it is when you're doing synchronized swimming, you put your hair up in a bun using Knox gelatin to hold it in place. Then you usually have a little headgear thing that goes on over the bun. And so, of course, since it was a baseball routine, we had a baseball hat for our headgear. The suits were all black and they had a script Seattle on them. And we all got to pick numbers, and we all chose different numbers so that we were kind of like a baseball team. Well, I wasn't overly into baseball, although the reason we had that routine was because the year before the Mariners made it to the conference championships. They didn't make it to the World Series, but they'd gotten knocked out just in the round before. Now, I didn't really follow sports all that much. And at the time, I actually followed the Seattle Sonics. That they moved to Oklahoma, but at the time they were out in Seattle. I actually followed them a little bit more. So when it came time to choosing our numbers, I chose number 11, who was, and for the Sonics, was a man named Detlef Schrempf. He was the only German national to be playing in the NBA at the time, or at least that's what I understand. So I chose number 11. And then later I learned that number 11 also corresponded to designated hitter of the Mariners, Edgar Martinez. I think it was about 2004, after I moved back to Montana, there was a woman and her daughter had an apartment or a condo in the same complex I did. We got to know each other, and periodically we'd meet on Sunday evenings, get a pizza, share a movie, just have some evenings together like that. And I don't remember how it was I got to talking about synchronized swimming and masters and the team that I swam on that had the baseball routine. But somehow it came up, and I told her, I said, "Yeah, I chose number 11, not so much because I knew who Edgar Martinez was, but because I was a basketball fan and I liked Detlef." And she goes, "Schrempf?" And I go, "Schrempf, that's his last name, but how did you know that?" Being in Montana. I mean, here we are, 1,000 miles away or 800 miles away from Seattle or however far it is. I'm like, how do you know that? Well, as it turned out, a good friend of hers that she grew up with in Montana, the friend's family moved out to Centralia, Washington. And that family was Detlef's billet family or host family when he was attending community college, or he was first getting set up in the US in Centralia before he went on and developed his basketball career. So here's a woman I knew in Bozeman whose friend not only knew Detlef Schrempf, but her whole family welcomed him as part of their family. So if you're thinking of it in terms of degrees of freedom or degrees of separation, me to my friend is 1, to her friend is 2, to Detlef Schrempf is number 3. I thought that was kind of cool. One of those, I don't know, call it quantum connections or what have you. And so a couple of years ago, I was strolling through a thrift store, and across the way, I happened to see this bobblehead, and it was turned, and I saw the number 11 on it. And I thought, I'll have to go check that out. And so I walk over, and as I got closer, I noticed the coloring, and I thought, no, is that really? Sure enough, it's an Edgar Martinez bobblehead. Now, considering he retired in, I think it was about 2000, 2001, early 2000s, coming across this about 20 years later at a thrift store, I thought was awesome. I, of course, paid the couple of bucks to get my Edgar Martinez bobblehead. And so if you notice in the videos, good old Ed, symbolic kind of Detlef, and my swim cap or my head piece is often on the shelf behind me. So that's part of that quantum underlying connection that I chose number 11 for an entirely different reason. I actually have a connection to the person that I chose the number for, and then come across this in a thrift store 20 years later. I love it. So for a couple of bucks, I thought I did pretty well. Little bobblehead. Hope you enjoyed that. Just kind of goes to that underlying tapestry of intersection and connection, as I call it. Some call it quantum, and it goes to that deeper meaning and deeper connectivity that I tend to get bombarded with. Thanks for joining me. Hope you found that interesting, humorous, something. Have a great day.